So my wife and I moved to this condo in St. Petersburg, Florida, approximately 2005. And we always had about, from the sidewalk here to where my wife is standing, was our grassy area. And then from that oak tree to where she's standing, all the way to that palm, was a giant wall of Brazilian pepper, Florida's worst invasive, class 1 invasive. And sitting on my patio, I used to see the tops of these oak trees, and I knew what a beautiful view I'd have if these crappy invasives were down. And then in 2016, long story short, I proposed to the board that if they let me get a team of volunteers together, I would start eradicating all the Brazilian pepper on the property, because it grows 10 feet a year and you got to pay to, just a waste of money to pay to have it trimmed. You might as well get rid of it, but then you gotta, if you cut it down, you gotta poison it, and then that adds a whole extra expense because people have to be licensed and whatnot to do that. So anyhow, when I first moved in, I grew up in Alaska, all my teenage years in Alaska, so I was going to get in this big wooded area and just see what was in there. And the only way beyond this oak tree was I had to buy a machete from Harbor Freight, and I cut a hole right about here, and I actually had to climb in sideways to be able to walk around in there. And fast forward almost 10 years later, and we're on 26 acres. There's about a 3 or 4 wooded area in the middle, which you're looking at, and I've probably 75% of the way done eradicating the Brazilian pepper in here. But I will give you a tour of, me and my wife are in the Florida Native Plant Society, and I will give you a tour of some of the things we planted, some of the things that have popped up on their own, some of the weeds, some of the edibles. I give foraging tours. So we'll start here, and we're in a bit of a drought, so this guy's looking a little peaked, but he'll perk back up when we start getting rain. But this is wild coffee. This is a Florida native. This is marlberry. We actually planted that, but that's a Florida native. The flowers smell unbelievable. This is a Simpson stopper. It's a Florida native. We actually planted that. My wife is walking through all these little white flowers. Are Biden's alba. They're a weed, but they're a native, and they're one of the top 5 beneficial plants for pollinators. The leaves are actually edible, bit medicinal. I know they used it sort of like penicillin in the Civil War. Oh, that guy's a little rough. It's scarlet. What is it? Scarlet Turk's cap mallow, but it doesn't have the flowers on it. This is a fire bush. This particular one doesn't have any flowers on it. We'll find you one that's got flowers. Show them the beautyberry. So this beautyberry is a Florida native. Super hardy. This thing pops up everywhere. And it's called beautyberry because these pink flowers that you see everywhere are about to turn into really pretty purple metallic BBs. They're fruit that the squirrels and the birds love. But look at the flowers everywhere, and this thing just pops up everywhere. Another beautyberry, Calocarpus americana. You can actually, the berries are actually edible, but they don't taste like much. The leaves you can crush up. Supposedly a very good mosquito repellent. This is called Fakahatchee grass. Me and my wife just love this one for some silly reason because of look at the little tassels that hang off of it this time of year. Some reason we get a kick out of that one. This is a salt bush, another Florida native. Actually edible, but Doesn't taste like much. Another beauty berry. They're everywhere. So this is a necklace pod. We planted it, but it's a Florida native. This is our one stand of Myrcene, Florida native, that was here. We didn't plant it, and it doesn't grow anywhere else. It doesn't seem to reseed itself. We don't seem to get it anywhere else but this little stand of it here. We got saw palmetto everywhere, of course. This is a beautiful laurel oak. And after the first year, the board threw me a surprise catered dinner party and presented me and the volunteers with this plaque. Very honored. Continuing on the path that I made. This is wax myrtle, Florida native. They actually make bayberry candles out of the wax from the berries. You can use the leaves as a substitute for bay leaves in cooking. This is St. John's wort. Sometimes has a yellow flower. Doesn't seem to be super prolific in Florida, but it's here. Occasionally flowers. St. John's wort, very medicinal. Big stand of wax myrtle. This is green buttonwood or green button bush. It's a Florida native, green button bush. And before I walk up and show you the really cool flowers, I don't know if you can see, but the pollinators just love this thing. It's a monarch butterfly over there. I don't know if you can see, but there's zebra longwing, our Florida state butterfly there. Anyhow, look how cool these flowers are. If I can find one that's blooming down low. Oh, here's one. Oh, there we go. So look how cool these flowers are. Looks like a Sputnik satellite from back in the late 50s. Look at nature's disco ball, but the butterflies just love this thing. We got live oaks everywhere. Cabbage palm, Florida state tree, pops up like weeds everywhere. So when I first hacked my way in here and was walking around, you can see the road over there. You couldn't see out of here because of all the Brazilian pepper. And like I say, we're in a drought, so our pond is pretty well dried up. But you could stand right about here, and because of how thick the Brazilian pepper was, you couldn't even see the water. And when it's got water in it, just full of frogs and ducks, or frogs and turtles, of course, but the wading birds love it. The green button bush over there is 3 different butterflies on it right there, right now. All right. There's a Phoenix reclinata, Senegal date palm, class 2 invasive. I just haven't gotten around to getting it down yet. So these are some of the paths I've created in here. Giant leather fern, grows everywhere, but I believe we transplanted that guy. There's our cypress that we planted. Looking good. There's with the little white flower there. There's elderberry. We don't have a ton in here, but we got another little preserve across the street that's just loaded with it. So we had a board member that joined the board. He was an elderly fellow. He was on the one of my volunteers to help eradicate all the Brazilian pepper. He couldn't do a whole lot, but he loved being out here and he did what he could. But he joined the board in what, like 2018 or so? Yeah. And he died about 2021. And when he died, I made this little memorial to him. He was a good guy. He was a mason. He just loved what we were doing out here. So I made that, put that plaque on the rock for him. Planted this pond cypress in his honor. Got that bench staring out into the pond in his honor. Miss you, Tom. Oh, there's a night heron. I don't know if you can see him down there. So, more paths that we created. It's a Flatwoods plum, a Florida native that we planted. Has this thing ever flowered?
I believe it did.
But when it flowered at the nursery, oh boy, did it smell beautiful. Here's our giant stand of saw palmetto. This is a cool. This is when a palm dies and all the sap, gravity takes over and all the sap runs to the middle, leaves behind this resinous, they call it fatwood. You can buy it at Home Depot to start a fire with. Paths all through there. Path that way. And unfortunately we got quite a bit of Melaleuca, which is probably in the top 3 worst class 1 invasives in Florida. Kathy says it's number 2. That's her position. Florida's got some bad ones because things grow 24/7 here. What? Oh, there's our native, well, our resident stray cat. So, well, I was going to show a better example of it. So that's a species of Smilax, catbrier. The tips are edible and actually pretty good, but I was going to show you a different species that's a little better to munch on. So, let's see. I know there'll be one here. I really wanted to show you a big good example of edible Smilax. Here we go. Kathy, bust off the, let me show them first. So that, let me put it against your shirt. Just stand there. So you can see the end of that. Always kind of reminds me of like whiskers, or, but you break off, you find where you just start kind of bending it and you see where it wants to snap, and they call above that the meristem. So it wanted to snap right there. And they say it tastes like asparagus. I don't know about that, but it's actually pretty good. It's probably one of my favorite edibles out here. I munch on it. I munch on it quite a bit when it's doing its thing. Yeah. So look at all we got beautiful live oaks everywhere. So we will walk across the street past the clubhouse. We planted a little native garden at the clubhouse, and then we'll walk into the, we call it the second preserve. It's a little more low-lying, a little more water-loving plants in there. We say like their feet wet. More plants that like their feet wet. So we planted that island. Put quite a few Florida natives on it. Simpson stopper, silver buttonwood. Love the silver buttonwood. It's Florida native, pretty hardy. Liriope, not native, but can't beat it. Pretty hardy. Coonties are just loving this time of year. It's mid-May. Pentas, not native, but if you like color, flowers are usually a pain in the behind, but pentas are, as long as they get decent water, they're pretty cooperative. But we planted this whole section here is our little Florida native nursery or garden. Native plants bring life to this landscape. It's a gopher apple.
Pitch apple.
Pitch apple. Coontie. What is this? Schiller's Delight?
Snow Fury.
Snow Fury by Snow Fury by Viburnum. Firebush, native, the Florida native firebush. They use the non-native firebush too much here in Florida, and a lot of people don't know that it's the non-native one, but this is the native one. The berries are actually edible, although they don't taste like much, and you're supposed to be able to grind the leaves up, and like if you get a bee sting or an ant sting, it's supposed to take the supposedly I heard it'll take the fire out of a sting, and that's why they call it firebush, but I ain't gonna quote that. That's a white stopper. Smells a lot like marijuana. You can't help but walk by that thing and smell it. Yeah, you think somebody's out here smoking a joint, but then you remember it's the white stopper. Bahama coffee.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about to get. It's just, you see all the little white flowers just starting to pop up, but it's about to just be loaded with little red berries and edible, but don't taste like a whole lot.
Privet.
Florida privet. Florida privet. Another firebush, but see the tubular flowers on this guy? The butterflies and the hummingbirds love that. Love this guy. So we're coming into the second preserve, and if you can see all the white flowers here, this is our elderberry forest. A lot of times I'll come out here and just nibble on the flowers. The flowers and the berries are very medicinal, edible, but the rest of the plant is poisonous. Clusia, Florida native, succulent, very hardy. So one more interesting edible I want to show everybody. But look at this elderberry. It's just loaded with flowers and berries that are just starting to ripen. But look at this guy. You gotta wait till the berries are purple, because I guess when they're green they're poisonous, or somewhat poisonous. But this guy, if you can see, just loaded with berries. And if you had a wet or marshy area and you were sort of a prepper or into medicinal, growing your own medicinal, this is probably one of my number one plants I would recommend. I just love these guys here. So this is called white stargrass. How pretty is that? Butterflies just love this little meadow. This was all Brazilian pepper 2-3 years ago. So I got one more edible I want to show everybody that's pretty cool. So this looks a little like a construction zone, because it was hardly anything redeeming in here. It was all Brazilian pepper and Melaleuca, but I've been transplanting some coffee, wild coffee, and beautyberry in here. The black nightshade grows like a weed, of course, in here. Actually edible. You got to do your homework on that one because there's issues to it, but it's edible. Pluchia, Florida native, everywhere in here. So should be that edible that I'm looking for. Okay, here we go. So they call this creeping cucumber, pendulata something or other. You see that little guy there? Tastes just like a cucumber. What does that taste like, Cal?
Cucumber.
Tastes like a
Baby
cucumber.
cucumber.
And they're
Delicious.
just everywhere. They just grow like weeds. This is another thing if you wanted to grow your own little maintenance-free edible garden, I would plant these guys. Okay, that is the tour of our preserves at the Enclave of St. Petersburg. Say goodbye, Kathy.
Bye.